They told you that to win in 2026, you need to speak louder, post more, explain yourself, defend yourself, prove yourself. But what if everything you've been told is backwards? What if the real advantage this year isn't found in saying more, but in saying less? What if the breakthrough you've been praying for is waiting on the other side of focus and silence? Because here's the truth. Most people never learn. Attention is currency, and where you spend it determines what you become. In a world addicted to noise, notifications, opinions, and endless comparisons, the person who learns to focus on themselves gains an unfair advantage. While everyone else is reacting, you are building. While everyone else is explaining, you are executing. While everyone else is talking about what they want, you are quietly becoming it. Most people think focus is just about concentration. But real focus is far more powerful than that. Focus is a multiplier. Whatever you consistently give your attention to doesn't just grow a little, it grows exponentially. The reason some people make 10 times the progress with the same resources is not because they are smarter, luckier, or more gifted. It's because their attention is intentional. They decide in advance where their energy goes. And once that decision is made, they don't renegotiate it every day based on emotions, opinions, or distractions. Every human being has the same 24 hours, but not every human being has the same why silence is a power move in 2026 level of focus. Attention is the raw material of achievement. When your attention is scattered, your results are fragmented. When your attention is focused, your results compound. This is why selective focus matters. You cannot focus on everything and expect to win at anything meaningful. The attempt to give attention to everyone, everything, and every opinion is the fastest way to dilute your own potential. Selective focus requires maturity. It requires the willingness to disappoint people who expect access to your time, your explanations, and your emotional energy. It requires the courage to say this matters more than that. Even when others don't understand your priorities, most people don't lack opportunities. They lack filters. They say yes too often, react too quickly, and explain too much. And every unnecessary yes steals power from the thing that could change their life. When you focus on yourself, you are not being selfish. You are being strategic. You are deciding that your growth, discipline, skills, and mindset deserve protection. The world rewards people who can go deep, not those who stay busy at the surface. Shallow attention creates shallow results. Deep focus creates mastery, and mastery creates leverage. This is why selective focus is a multiplier. 1 hour of focus effort can outperform 10 hours of distracted motion. Distraction feels productive, but it's deceptive. It gives the illusion of progress while quietly draining momentum. You answer messages, consume content, react to opinions, scroll through other people's lives, and at the end of the day, you feel tired but unchanged. Focus, by contrast, often feels uncomfortable. It requires stillness, repetition, and patience. But discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign you're doing something meaningful. The moment you decide to focus on yourself, you stop outsourcing your direction. You stop letting trends. Focus is the new currency. Criticism, praise, or comparison dictate your pace. You begin to move according to purpose rather than pressure. And purpose-driven movement always outlasts emotion-driven action. Feelings change, opinions shift. Focus anchored in intention remains stable. Selective focus also forces clarity. When you narrow your attention, you start seeing patterns you missed before. You recognize what drains you and what fuels you. You identify habits that quietly sabotage progress. You begin to understand that not everything deserves a response and not everyone deserves access. Clarity is expensive because it demands elimination, and elimination requires letting go. Most people want growth without sacrifice. They want results without boundaries. They want success without solitude. But focus demands all three. To focus is to choose one direction while walking past several tempting alternatives. It means trusting that what you are building in private will eventually speak louder than anything you could say in public. When you focus on yourself consistently, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who reacts and start seeing yourself as someone who creates. Your confidence no longer depends on feedback. Your motivation no longer depends on external approval. You develop internal authority, and internal authority always precedes external influence. This is why selective focus multiplies results. It aligns your actions with your identity. It reduces wasted motion. It sharpens execution. It turns effort into equity. Over time, the gap between those who focus and those who don't becomes impossible to ignore. One group stays busy explaining why they're stuck. The other quietly moves forward. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean ignoring the world forever. It means prioritizing the season you are in. There are seasons for visibility and seasons for invisibility. Seasons for speaking and seasons for the reason most people never level up: silence. The people who understand this don't rush exposure before preparation. They don't seek attention before alignment. They build capacity first because they know that attention without substance collapses under pressure. Selective focus trains discipline. Discipline creates consistency. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum attracts opportunity. This is the order most people try to reverse. They chase opportunity first, then scramble to build discipline later. But focus flips the equation. It makes you ready before you are visible, grounded before you are tested, prepared before you are praised. When you truly focus on yourself, progress becomes inevitable. Not fast, not flashy, not always visible, but inevitable. Because focus energy applied consistently over time always produces results that distraction never can. We live in an age where noise is mistaken for power. The louder someone speaks, the more important they are assumed to be. The more they post, explain, argue, or defend themselves, the more relevant they believe they are becoming. But the truth is, noise rarely creates influence. It creates exposure. And exposure without control often weakens position. Silence, when used intentionally, becomes a strategic advantage in a world addicted to constant expression. Silence is not the absence of confidence. It is the presence of self-mastery. When you don't feel the need to respond to everything, you demonstrate that your identity is stable. You are not easily provoked, manipulated, or pulled into battles that drain your energy. Most people lose not because they are overpowered, but because they are overextended. They spend their strength explaining themselves to people who were never committed to understanding them in the first place. Every reaction has a cost. Every argument consumes emotional. Myron Golden's philosophy on self-mastery capital. Every explanation hands over a piece of your authority. Strategic silence protects that authority. It allows you to observe without being observed, to listen without revealing your intentions, to move without announcing your direction. In environments filled with competition, opinions, and egos, the quiet individual often holds the strongest position because they see more than they say. Silence creates space for thinking. Noise interrupts clarity. When your mind is constantly responding, it has no room to reflect. Reflection is where insight is formed. Insight is where wise decisions come from. People who talk non-stop are often thinking in public, and public thinking invites unnecessary interference. Silence gives your thoughts time to mature before they are exposed to scrutiny. There is also power in unpredictability. When you speak too much, you become easy to read. Your intentions are obvious. Your emotions are transparent. But when you are selective with your words, people pay attention. When you finally speak, your words carry weight because they are rare. Silence, used correctly, trains others to listen more closely. Most people reveal their plans too early. They announce goals before discipline is built. They share visions before skills are developed. Then they wonder why motivation fades. Silence protects momentum. When you keep your plans private, you remove the pressure of performance for an audience. You allow growth to happen organically rather than theatrically. Silence also reduces resistance. Not everyone wants to see you succeed, even if they smile at you. Some people don't oppose you openly. They undermine you subtly. When you speak less, you give them less material to work with. You stop feeding insecurity, jealousy, and unnecessary comparison. Silence becomes a filter that separates supporters from spectators. In a noisy world, silence sharpens intuition. When external voices are quiet, internal guidance becomes clearer. You begin to stop broadcasting, start building, hear what aligns with you and what doesn't. You stop confusing popularity with purpose. Silence reconnects you with your values, your standards, and your long-term vision. Strategic silence is especially powerful during moments of provocation. When criticized, misunderstood, or challenged, the instinct is to defend. But defense often validates attacks that don't deserve legitimacy. Silence denies them oxygen. Not every accusation requires clarification. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes the most powerful response is continued progress. Silence does not mean avoidance. It means discernment. It means choosing battles that matter and ignoring those that don't. Energy is finite. Every unnecessary reaction drains resources that could be invested in growth. Strategic silence ensures your energy is spent on creation, not contention. When you stay silent, you gain emotional leverage. You control the tempo of interaction. You are no longer predictable or reactive. You respond intentionally, not impulsively. This shifts power dynamics immediately. People who are reactive are easy to manipulate. People who are composed are difficult to control. There is also a psychological dimension to silence. When you don't explain yourself, people fill the gaps with their own assumptions. Often those assumptions are more favorable than any explanation you could give. Silence allows perception to work in your favor rather than against you. Silence protects your future self. Words spoken in emotion can't be retrieved. Reputations damaged by overexposure take years to repair. Strategic silence acts as a safeguard, ensuring that your actions, not your reactions, define you. Those who master silence understand that progress speaks louder than announcements. They let results handle conversations they don't need to enter. They allow outcomes to introduce them rather than introductions trying to justify them. Over time, silence builds mystique, authority, and respect. In a world competing for attention, the person who can remain disciplined over motivation every time as silent gains clarity. And clarity applied consistently becomes an advantage that noise can never replicate. We are living in a time where distraction is not accidental. It is engineered. Every notification, every headline, every short video is designed to pull your attention away from what actually matters. And the danger is not that these things exist. The danger is that most people surrender to them without resistance. Discipline is no longer just a personal virtue. It is a survival skill in an economy that profits from your lack of focus. Distraction always feels harmless in the moment. It arrives disguised as entertainment, connection, or information. You tell yourself you'll just check one thing, respond to one message, scroll for a few minutes. But those minutes compound into hours, and those hours quietly steal years. Discipline is the ability to say no to what feels good now, so you can say yes to what matters later. The attention economy rewards reactivity, not depth. It wants you emotionally triggered, constantly responding, constantly consuming. The more distracted you are, the more predictable you become, and predictable people are easy to influence, easy to sell to, easy to control. Discipline breaks that pattern. Discipline gives you back ownership of your time, your mind, and your direction. Most people associate discipline with restriction, but true discipline is freedom. It frees you from impulsive decisions, it frees you from emotional swings, it frees you from being at the mercy of every external stimulus. When you develop discipline, you no longer live according to urgency. You live according to priority. Distraction fragments identity. When your attention is constantly pulled in different how silence confuses your doubters' directions, you lose continuity. You start many things but finish few. You adopt opinions you haven't examined. You chase trends that don't align with your values. Discipline restores coherence. It allows you to move in one direction long enough to build something real. The cost of distraction is rarely immediate. That's why it's dangerous. It doesn't announce itself as failure. It shows up as delay, inconsistency, and unrealized potential. You're not off track enough to panic, but you're not focused enough to progress. Discipline closes that gap. High attention environments make low disciplined behavior socially acceptable. Everyone is distracted, so distraction feels normal. But normal doesn't mean optimal. Just because everyone is scrolling doesn't mean everyone is growing. Discipline is choosing a different standard for yourself, even when it makes you look out of place. Discipline is built through small, repeated decisions. It's choosing to finish what you start. It's choosing to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. It's choosing depth over dopamine. These choices may seem insignificant individually, but together they shape character. The disciplined mind understands delayed gratification. It knows that meaningful results take time. It resists the urge for instant feedback. Distraction, on the other hand, demands constant stimulation. It cannot tolerate silence, stillness, or waiting. The identity shift that changes everything. That's why discipline is rare. It requires patience in a culture that celebrates immediacy. When you practice discipline, your self-trust increases. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, your confidence grows. Not confidence rooted in praise, but confidence rooted in integrity. And integrity is a powerful stabilizer. It allows you to stay consistent even when motivation fades. Discipline also sharpens decision-making. when you are not constantly distracted. You see consequences more clearly. You think long-term. You recognize trade-offs. You stop making choices based solely on how they feel in the moment. This clarity compounds over time. The absence of discipline doesn't just affect productivity, it affects peace. A distracted mind is rarely calm. It jumps from thought to thought, task to task, never fully present. Discipline brings mental order. It creates boundaries that protect focus and emotional stability. In a high-attention economy, the disciplined individual stands out, not because they are louder, but because they are consistent. Not because they move faster, but because they move with intention. While others chase every new stimulus, the disciplined person quietly builds depth. Walk quietly, let results make noise. Discipline does not require perfection. It requires commitment. You will fail at times, you will get distracted. What matters is returning to the standard you've set for yourself without self-condemnation. Discipline is not about punishment, it's about alignment. Those who master discipline gain an advantage that cannot be taken from them. Algorithms change, trends fade, platforms collapse. But self-discipline remains transferable. It applies to any goal, any season, any environment. Discipline is the bridge between potential and execution. Without it, talent remains unused. With it, even ordinary abilities produce extraordinary outcomes. In a world designed to distract you, choosing discipline is choosing to take your life seriously. Most people are searching for validation before they ever define who they are. They want applause before alignment, recognition before roots, approval before clarity. And this is why so many people feel unstable. When your identity depends on external validation, your confidence rises and falls with opinions you cannot control. Identity alignment must come first, because anything built on validation alone will eventually collapse under pressure. When you don't know who you are, you outsource that decision to the world. You let likes, comments, praise, criticism, and comparison shape how you see yourself. One day you feel powerful, the next day you feel invisible. Not because you changed, because the feedback changed. That's an exhausting way to live. Identity alignment brings stability. It anchors you to something deeper than applause. Alignment means your actions match your values even when no one is watching. It means you move according to the principles, not popularity. It means you are clear about what you stand for before the world decides how it feels about you. When identity comes first, validation becomes optional, not necessary. Many people confuse attention with worth. They believe that being seen means being valuable. But attention is cheap. Alignment is rare. Attention can be borrowed, bought, or manipulated. Alignment must be built. It takes honesty, self-reflection, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths about yourself. When you are aligned, you stop chasing rooms that don't fit you. You stop performing for audiences that don't understand you. You stop shrinking or exaggerating yourself to be accepted. Alignment removes desperation. And desperation is what causes people to compromise their standards just to belong. External validation is unpredictable. It is given and taken without explanation. One mistake, one misunderstanding, one shift in trends, and it disappears. If your identity depends on it, you disappear with it. But when your identity is aligned internally, external reactions lose their power. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't destroy you. You remain centered. Alignment requires solitude. You cannot hear your own voice when everyone else is talking. This is why silence plays such a critical role in identity. Silence gives you space to separate who you truly are from who you've been trying to impress. It allows you to examine your motivations honestly. Are you doing this because it aligns with your purpose or because you want approval? When identity alignment comes first, decision-making becomes simpler. You no longer ask, will they like this? You ask, is this true to me? That single shift saves years of confusion. It prevents you from building a life that looks good externally but feels empty internally. People who seek validation first often over-explain themselves. They justify their choices. They defend their boundaries. They feel guilty for saying no. Alignment removes the need for explanation. When you are clear, your decisions don't require permission. There is also a cost to validation, seeking that few people talk about. The more you chase approval, the more you train others to control you. If praise motivates you, withdrawal of praise manipulates you. Alignment breaks that cycle. It makes you internally governed instead of externally managed. Identity alignment doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop allowing people to define you. It means you can listen without surrendering your sense of self. It means you can receive feedback without losing direction. Aligned individuals move differently. They are calm in uncertainty. They are consistent in chaos. They don't rush to prove themselves. They let time and results speak. This quiet confidence is not arrogance, it's clarity. Many people want confidence, but confidence is a byproduct, not a goal. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. It comes from living in agreement with your values. It comes from doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. That kind of confidence doesn't need validation to survive. When you prioritize identity alignment, you also attract better opportunities. Not more opportunities, but better ones. Opportunities that match who you are instead of pulling you away from yourself. Misaligned people attract misaligned outcomes. Aligned people create coherence in their lives. The danger of external validation is that it often rewards performance over authenticity. You start becoming a version of yourself that gets rewarded, not a version that feels real. Over time, that gap creates inner conflict. Alignment closes that gap. When you know who you are, silence becomes easier. You don't feel the urge to announce every move. You don't feel threatened by other people's success. You don't feel rushed to keep up. You move at your own pace because your direction is clear. Identity alignment before external validation is not a popular message because it requires inner work, but it is the foundation of sustainable success. Without it, everything else is unstable. Most people want visible success without invisible growth. They want results that can be celebrated, applauded, and recognized, but they underestimate the quiet work that makes those results possible. What the world applauds is always built in places the world never sees. Internal growth is the foundation of everything that lasts, and without it, any external success becomes fragile. Internal growth begins with honesty. Honest evaluation is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront gaps between who you are and who you want to become. Many people avoid this process because it challenges their self-image. But avoidance doesn't eliminate weakness, it preserves it. Growth requires the courage to see yourself clearly without excuses or illusions. Before skills are sharpened, mindset must be refined. Before opportunities expand, capacity must increase. External success magnifies what already exists inside you. If discipline is weak internally, success exposes it. If character is unstable internally, visibility amplifies it. This is why internal growth must come first. It prepares you to handle what you are asking for. Internal growth happens quietly. There are no announcements when you change your thinking, no applause when you build emotional control, no recognition when you choose discipline over comfort. These victories happen in silence, often in isolation. And because they are unseen, many people quit. They mistake lack of recognition for lack of progress. The truth is the most important transformations happen when no one is watching. Your habits are formed in private. Your resilience is built in adversity. Your standards are reinforced in solitude. These internal shifts determine how you show up when opportunity arrives. Visible success without internal growth creates pressure. You are constantly trying to maintain an image instead of expanding your capacity. You fear being exposed. You fear failure. You fear losing what you haven't matured enough to sustain. Internal growth removes that fear. It builds confidence rooted in competence, not appearance. When you invest in internal growth, you become less reactive. You don't panic when things slow down. You don't get intoxicated when things speed up. You remain grounded because your stability comes from within, not from circumstances. Internal growth also strengthens discernment. You begin to recognize distractions disguised as opportunities. Not every open door is meant to be entered. Growth teaches you to choose alignment over excitement. That wisdom is invisible, but it saves years of wasted effort. Many people chase visibility because they believe it will validate their progress. But validation does not equal development. Growth is measured by who you are becoming, not by who is watching. Internal growth shifts your focus from appearance to substance. This is why silence is often the companion of growth. When you are focused on becoming, you have less interest in announcing. You understand that premature exposure can interrupt development. You protect your process. You allow yourself to evolve without pressure. Internal growth is cumulative. Small changes in thinking compound over time. One improved habit leads to another. One boundary strengthens the next. Over months and years, these internal shifts create an external reality that looks effortless but was anything but. The world celebrates outcomes, But outcomes are delayed reflections of internal states. What you see on the surface is evidence of decisions made long ago. When you understand this, you stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. You respect the process. Internal growth requires patience. It does not operate on the same timeline as social validation. It unfolds gradually, often invisibly. This tests commitment. Are you willing to grow without praise? Are you willing to improve without recognition? Those who say yes eventually become undeniable. When internal growth becomes your priority, your relationship with time changes. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You stop measuring your worth by speed. You understand that depth takes time and depth creates durability. Internal growth also prepares you for responsibility. Success always brings weight. Influence brings pressure. Leadership brings scrutiny. Without internal growth, these things crush people. With it, they refine you. The strongest individuals are not those who rise the fastest, but those who last the longest. Longevity is built internally. It is built through emotional intelligence, self-regulation, humility, and discipline. These qualities cannot be borrowed or faked. They must be developed. Let me ask you something that might make you a little uncomfortable. But discomfort is where transformation begins. What if the biggest enemy standing between you and the life you want is not your background, not your resources, not your lack of connections, but a habit you keep excusing every single day? Laziness doesn't usually announce itself loudly. It whispers. It tells you tomorrow will be better, later will be easier, next week will be perfect. And while you wait, life keeps moving, opportunities keep passing, and potential quietly expires. Laziness is not just the absence of work, it's the presence of excuses that feel logical enough to justify inaction. Most people don't fail because they are incapable. They fail because they negotiate with their comfort. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it is expensive in the long run. Every time you choose ease over effort, you are making a withdrawal from your future. And one day you wake up and realize the account is empty. Not because you weren't talented, but because you weren't disciplined. The truth is, discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect in action. It is you deciding that your future deserves more than your temporary feelings. Most people imagine danger as something loud, aggressive, and obvious. But the most destructive forces in life are usually quiet. Laziness doesn't kick down the door of your future. It sneaks in softly and rearranges your priorities without you. Why? Laziness is a decision, not a feeling. Noticing. It doesn't tell you to quit on your dreams. It simply tells you to wait. It tells you that you deserve rest before the work is done. That you'll start when conditions are perfect. That you still have time. And that's why laziness is so dangerous, because it never feels like self-destruction in the moment. It feels reasonable. It feels harmless. It feels like self-care. But while you're listening to that soft voice, your destiny is being robbed one day at a time. Laziness is not always lying on the couch doing nothing. Sometimes it looks like scrolling endlessly while calling it research. Sometimes it looks like planning without executing. Sometimes it looks like staying busy with low-impact tasks so you can avoid the uncomfortable work that actually moves your life forward. That's the trick. Laziness disguises itself as activity so you don't feel guilty. It gives you just enough movement to feel productive, but not enough progress to change your situation. And over time, you start confusing motion with momentum, and that confusion costs you years. The real tragedy is that laziness doesn't steal from people who lack ability. It steals from people with enormous potential. You don't feel regret over what you were incapable of doing. You feel regret over what you know you could have done. Laziness feeds on potential because potential creates comfort. You tell yourself, I can do it anytime. And that belief becomes the reason you never do it at all. When you know you're capable, laziness convinces you that urgency is unnecessary, but destiny responds to action, not intention. Intention feels good, but it doesn't build anything. Action does. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are either investing in your future or spending it. Laziness is spending your future for the comfort of the present. It's choosing short-term relief over long-term reward. And the scary part is that the bill doesn't come immediately. It comes later, when the psychological trap keeping you stuck, opportunities don't show up anymore. When energy isn't what it used to be, when responsibilities increase and freedom decreases. By then, laziness has already done its damage, and it did it quietly. Laziness also shapes identity. The more you delay, the more you start seeing yourself as someone who delays, the more promises you break to yourself, the less you trust yourself. And once self-trust is broken, confidence begins to collapse. You stop believing your own goals. You stop taking your own dreams seriously. Not because they aren't important, but because laziness has trained you to doubt your follow-through. This is how destiny is stolen internally before it's ever stolen externally. What makes laziness so effective is that it partners with fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. Laziness says stay where it's safe. Destiny says move where it's meaningful. One requires courage, the other requires nothing. And human nature, if left undisciplined, will almost always choose the path of least resistance. That's why growth feels unnatural at first. That's why discipline feels uncomfortable. You are literally overriding an internal system that is designed to preserve energy, not fulfill purpose. The problem is, you were not created merely to preserve energy. You were created to produce value. Destiny is tied to contribution, and contribution requires effort. Laziness blocks contribution. And when contribution is blocked, fulfillment disappears. That's why people who avoid effort often feel empty, bored, or restless. It's not because they need more entertainment. It's because their purpose is being ignored. Laziness doesn't just steal success, it steals meaning. There is a moment in every person's life where they must confront this truth. No one is coming to rescue you from your comfort zone. No one is going to force you to become who you're capable of becoming. Laziness thrives in environments where accountability is absent and standards are low. Destiny requires standards. It requires you to demand more from yourself than the world demands from you. The moment you raise your personal lazy thinking vs wealthy thinking standards, laziness starts to suffocate. You don't defeat laziness with inspiration alone. Inspiration fades. You defeat laziness by changing how you see yourself. When you see yourself as someone with a responsibility to your future, laziness becomes unacceptable. When you understand that every wasted day is a day you will never get back, delay becomes expensive. Time is the one resource you cannot replenish, and laziness is the habit that wastes it most efficiently. If you're honest with yourself, you already know the areas where laziness has been stealing from you. The unfinished projects, the delayed decisions, the goals you keep talking about but haven't touched. Awareness is the beginning of recovery. Once you see laziness for what it really is, a thief of destiny, you stop treating it gently. You stop negotiating with it. You stop romanticizing rest you haven't earned. And the moment you stop protecting laziness, you start protecting your future. Comfort is seductive because it promises relief without requiring effort. It tells you that you've done enough, that you deserve a break, that pushing yourself can wait. And in small doses, comfort isn't the enemy. The danger begins when comfort becomes a lifestyle instead of a recovery tool. The moment you start organizing your life around what feels easiest, you begin paying a price you don't see immediately. Comfort always sends the bill later. And when it arrives, it's usually higher than you expected. Every choice you make is a trade. When you choose comfort, you are trading growth for ease. When you choose discipline, you are trading ease for progress. Most people don't consciously make this trade. They drift into it. They hit the snooze button one more time. They postpone the difficult conversation. They delay starting the project because the couch feels better than the challenge. None of these decisions feel life-altering on their own, but compounded over time, they shape the direction of your life. The life you're living right now is largely the result, the painful truth about motivation, of the comfort-discipline balance you've been choosing for years. Discipline has a bad reputation because people confuse it with punishment. Discipline is not about suffering, it's about alignment. It's about aligning your daily actions with your long-term vision. Comfort aligns you with how you feel today. Discipline aligns you with who you want to become tomorrow. One is driven by emotion, the other by intention. And intention always outperforms emotion in the long run. Emotion is reactive, intention is proactive. Comfort reacts to the moment. Discipline designs the future. The reward structure of comfort is immediate. You feel good right now. You avoid stress right now. You escape discomfort right now. Discipline doesn't work like that. Discipline delays gratification. It asks you to endure a little discomfort today so you can experience a much greater reward later. That delay is why so many people struggle with discipline. They want the reward without the wait. But life doesn't work that way. Every meaningful outcome is hidden behind a period of discomfort, effort, and consistency. What most people don't realize is that comfort doesn't eliminate pain. It just postpones it. You can endure the pain of discipline now, or you can endure the pain of regret later. Either way, pain is part of the equation. The difference is the payoff. The pain of discipline builds strength, confidence, and options. The pain of regret builds frustration, self-doubt, and limitation. One expands your life, the other shrinks it. And the longer you choose comfort over discipline, the more expensive discipline becomes when you finally need it. Discipline compounds in the same way comfort does. One disciplined action makes the next one easier. One kept promise to yourself strengthens self-trust over time. Discipline stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like identity. You become the kind of person who does what needs to be done regardless of how you feel. Comfort, on the other hand, weakens identity. The more you avoid effort, the harder effort feels. The more you indulge ease, the more fragile you become. Comfort doesn't make life easier, it makes you weaker for life. How disciplined people win without feeling ready. The real reward of discipline isn't just the external results, it's the internal transformation. Discipline builds self-respect. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. When you say you're going to do something and you actually do it, you send a powerful message to your subconscious. I can be trusted. That trust changes how you show up in every area of life. Comfort erodes that trust. Every time you choose ease over commitment, you teach yourself that your word is negotiable. Discipline also creates freedom, which sounds backward to people who have never practiced it. They think freedom comes from having no rules, no structure, no pressure. In reality, structure creates space. Discipline with your time gives you more time. Discipline with your finances gives you more options. Discipline with your health gives you more energy. Comfort promises freedom, but delivers limitation. Discipline feels restrictive at first, but opens doors comfort can't even see. The uncomfortable truth is that no one accidentally builds an extraordinary life. Extraordinary lives are built through ordinary discipline actions repeated consistently over time. Comfort thrives in randomness. Discipline thrives in routine. Routine is not boring when it's connected to a purpose. It becomes grounding. It becomes stabilizing. It becomes the framework that supports growth when motivation disappears. Every day, you are casting a vote for the life you want or the life you're settling for. Comfort asks, what do I feel like doing? Discipline asks, what does this moment require? One question keeps you average. The other moves you forward. And the gap between where you are and where you want to be is rarely a gap of intelligence or talent. It's a gap of disciplined choices made consistently over time. Most people spend their lives searching for someone or something to blame. They blame their upbringing, their environment, their lack of support, the economy, the timing, the system. And while those things may influence your journey, they do not control your destination. The moment you hand the daily system that kills laziness permanently, responsibility to something outside of yourself, you also hand over your power. Personal responsibility is not about ignoring reality. It's about recognizing where your control actually begins. And it always begins with you. Nothing truly changes in a person's life until they stop waiting for permission to change. As long as you believe someone else needs to fix your situation, motivate you, or rescue you, you remain stuck. Waiting is passive. Responsibility is active. Responsibility says, this is my life, and regardless of what happened, what didn't happen, or what should have happened, what happens next is on me. That statement alone separates people who grow from people who stay exactly where they are. Taking responsibility is uncomfortable because it removes your excuses. Excuses are emotional cushions. They soften the impact of disappointment. They protect your ego from the truth, but they also protect your limitations. When you stop making excuses, you are forced to confront your habits, your decisions, and your patterns. And that confrontation can be painful. But pain is often the doorway to progress. Avoiding responsibility feels good in the short term, but it quietly locks the door to transformation. The turning point in every meaningful life story is the same moment. Even though it looks different on the surface, it's the moment someone says, I can't control everything, but I can control something, and I'm going to take full ownership of that. That shift changes how you see problems. Problems stop being reasons to quit and start becoming signals for growth. Obstacles stop being walls and start becoming assignments. Responsibility reframes difficulty as something to engage with rather than something to escape from. Personal responsibility also restores dignity. There is something deeply empowering about knowing that your effort matters, that your choices matter, that your response matters. When you take responsibility, you stop feeling like life is happening to you and start feeling like you are what happens when you stop making excuses, participating in your own life. That sense of agency fuels confidence. Not the loud performative kind, but the quiet confidence that comes from self-reliance. You begin to trust yourself because you are no longer outsourcing your outcomes. One of the most dangerous beliefs a person can hold is the belief that they are stuck. Stuck is often just unclaimed responsibility. When you take responsibility, options appear. They may not be easy options. They may not be comfortable options, but they are options. Responsibility expands your range of action. Blame narrows it. Blame says there's nothing I can do. Responsibility says there's something I can do and I will do it. That difference changes everything. Responsibility also demands consistency, not intensity. You don't change your life by making one dramatic decision. You change it by making small, responsible decisions repeatedly. Choosing to show up when you don't feel like it. Choosing to follow through when no one is watching. Choosing to do the work even when there is no immediate reward. These choices seem insignificant in isolation, but together they create momentum, and momentum is what pulls you out of stagnation. When you fully accept responsibility, you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop lowering your standards to match your behavior and start raising your behavior to match your standards. You begin to ask better questions. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of asking, this message will change how you move tomorrow, who failed me, you ask, how can I respond better? Those questions keep you moving forward instead of keeping you emotionally stuck. Personal responsibility also changes how you view time. You stop wasting it. You stop assuming you have unlimited chances. When you realize that your future is built on the decisions you make today, procrastination loses its appeal. Delay becomes costly. You understand that every day you avoid responsibility is a day you are actively shaping a future you may not want. Responsibility creates urgency without panic. It creates focus without pressure. The truth is, no one owes you the life you want. And that truth, while uncomfortable, is incredibly freeing. Because if no one owes it to you, no one can take it from you either. Your progress is not dependent on perfect conditions or external validation. It is dependent on your willingness to own your choices and act on them. Responsibility doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees growth. And growth is the only path that ever leads anywhere worth going. Most people try to change their results without changing their identity, and that's why their progress never lasts. They try to work harder for a week, wake up earlier for a few days, push themselves temporarily, but sooner or later they slide back into the same patterns. Not because they are weak, but because behavior always follows identity. You don't consistently do what you don't believe you are. If you see yourself as a procrastinator, you will always find reasons to delay. If you see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, action becomes natural. The real battle is not with time management or motivation. The real battle is with how you see yourself. Identity is shaped quietly through repetition. Every small action you take is a message to your subconscious about who you are. When you delay, you reinforce the identity of someone who avoids discomfort. When you take action, even imperfect action, you reinforce the identity of someone who moves forward. This is why waiting for confidence is a mistake. Confidence is not the cause of action. It is the result of it. You act first and identity follows. You don't become a producer because you feel ready. You feel ready because you've been producing. The shift begins when you stop asking, what do I feel like doing, and start asking, who am I becoming by doing this? That question changes everything. Suddenly the decision to work, to focus, to show up is no longer about the task. It's about protecting an identity. When action becomes an expression of who you are instead of a reaction to how you feel, consistency becomes possible. Feelings fluctuate, but identity is stable, and stability is what creates momentum. A procrastinator waits for the right mood. A producer creates momentum regardless of mood. That doesn't mean producers never feel resistance. They feel it just like everyone else. The difference is they don't interpret resistance as a stop sign. They interpret it as a signal that growth is happening. Procrastinators see discomfort as a reason to pause. Producers see discomfort as part of the process. One avoids friction. Identity also determines how you respond after failure. When someone sees themselves as lazy or inconsistent, failure confirms their self-image. They say, "This is just who I am," and they retreat. But when someone sees themselves as a producer, failure becomes feedback, not a verdict. They adjust and continue. Identity decides whether failure is final or instructional, and that decision determines how far you go. What makes this shift powerful is that it doesn't require perfection. It requires alignment. You don't need to do everything right. You just need to do the next right thing consistently. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, your identity strengthens. Each time you break one, it weakens. This is why starting small is not weakness, it's strategy. Small wins create self-trust. Self-trust creates confidence. Confidence reinforces identity. Identity sustains action. Many people sabotage themselves because they cling to an old version of themselves that feels familiar. Even if that version is frustrated, unfulfilled, or stuck, it's predictable. Growth requires letting go of the identity that kept you safe but small. That can feel uncomfortable because you are stepping into the unknown. But the unknown is where expansion lies. You cannot become someone new while protecting who you used to be. The moment you decide, "I am someone who takes action," you don't become perfect overnight, but you do become intentional. You start noticing opportunities to act instead of excuses to delay. You stop overthinking and start engaging. You don't wait for conditions to improve. You improve yourself within the conditions you have. That's the mindset of a producer. Producers don't ask for ideal circumstances. They create value with what's available. Identity also influences your standards. When you see yourself as disciplined, you naturally raise the bar for your behavior. You don't tolerate habits that contradict who you believe you are. You don't negotiate with laziness because it no longer aligns with your self-image. This isn't about willpower. Willpower is temporary. Identity is durable. You don't have to force yourself to act like someone you believe you are. You act that way naturally. The most powerful words you can say to yourself are not affirmations you don't believe, but decisions you live out. I am the kind of person who shows up. I am the kind of person who finishes. I am the kind of person who acts even when it's uncomfortable. When those statements are backed by behavior, they stop being words and start being truth. And once identity shifts, laziness loses its grip, because you are no longer trying to change what you do. You are changing who you are. Most people think their biggest problem is lack of time, but the real problem is lack of urgency. Urgency is not panic. It's awareness. It's the understanding that this moment matters more than you're treating it. Laziness survives on the belief that there will always be another chance, another day, another opportunity. Urgency exposes that lie. It reminds you that time is moving. Whether you move or not, and every moment you delay is a moment you can never recover. The present moment is the only place where change can happen. Not in the past, not in the future, only now. Yet laziness constantly pulls your attention away from now. It keeps you mentally living in tomorrow, promising that you'll start when you feel more ready, more confident, more prepared. But readiness is not something you wait for. It's something you build by acting. The irony is that the future you keep postponing action for is being shaped by what you do in this very moment. And if this moment is wasted, the future will reflect that waste. Urgency creates clarity. When you understand that time is limited, distractions lose their appeal. You stop overthinking decisions that don't deserve that much attention. You stop entertaining excuses that no longer make sense. Urgency simplifies life by forcing you to focus on what actually matters. Laziness complicates life by filling your mind with unnecessary options, unnecessary delays, and unnecessary fears. Urgency cuts through the noise and says, "Do what matters now." Many people underestimate how quickly life changes. Energy changes, responsibilities, priorities change. What feels easy to postpone today may be impossible to address later. Laziness assumes stability. Urgency respects reality. Reality is unstable. Opportunities have windows, windows close. Not because you're unlucky, but because time doesn't wait for hesitation. The cost of an action is often invisible until it's irreversible. Urgency doesn't mean rushing blindly. It means refusing to drift. There is a difference between moving fast and moving intentionally. Laziness drifts. It lets days blend together. It lets weeks pass without progress. Urgency anchors you in purpose. It asks, if this was the last chance, how would I show up? That question alone changes behavior. It pulls effort out of you that comfort could never access. The danger of laziness is not just what it stops you from doing, but what it conditions you to accept. When you delay long enough, underperformance starts to feel normal. Mediocrity becomes familiar. You stop expecting more from yourself because you've trained yourself to live without urgency. And once urgency is gone, ambition fades quietly. Not because you don't want more, but because you've lost the emotional pressure to act. Urgency is a skill, not a personality trait. It can be developed. It begins with honesty. Honest about where you are. Honest about how much time you've already wasted. Honest about the gap between what you say you want and what you actually do. That honesty can be uncomfortable, but discomfort sharpens focus. It wakes you up. Laziness thrives in denial. Urgency thrives in truth. When urgency is present, action becomes simpler. You don't wait for perfect plans. You don't need excessive motivation. You do the next right thing. Momentum builds quickly when urgency leads, because urgency doesn't argue with resistance. It acknowledges it moves anyway. Resistance loses power when it's no longer debated. Urgency also changes how you value small actions. You realize that small actions done now are far more valuable than big intentions saved for later. You stop underestimating consistency. You stop overestimating inspiration. You understand that progress is not dramatic, it's deliberate. Laziness wants dramatic motivation. Urgency wants decisive movement. The present moment is always asking something of you. Attention, effort, courage. Laziness ignores the request. Urgency answers it. And every time you answer, you strengthen the habit of action. The more you act with urgency, the less space laziness has to exist. It cannot survive in an environment where time is respected and purpose is prioritized. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Someday, now will be then. The moment you're wasting today will be the moment you wish you could return to. Urgency is the awareness of that truth before regret sets in. It's choosing action while you still can, while energy is available, while opportunity is present, while the door is still open. And once urgency becomes your default, laziness no longer feels tempting, because you finally understand the value of the moment you're standing in.